So today I'm going to talk about how to test some of the gauges and the CVR, the continuous voltage regulator, on a 1966 Mustang. I recently bought this car and I noticed that the temp gauge wasn't working when I got it. The needle on the temp gauge would start way to the left of the gauge, and then it would never go much beyond the second line from the left. And there are two or three possible reasons why this could happen. One is a bad sending unit, the temperature sending unit in the engine. The other is that the cooling system is not working properly, so that the temperature never gets up very high. And the third is that there's something wrong with the temperature gauge. There are YouTube videos showing how this can be done without taking the dash out, and that involves accessing the wire that connects to the gauge at the sender portion, and then you short that to your engine very, very briefly, and that should, because the resistance goes to zero, make the needle move all the way to the right. That's a little dangerous because if you leave it on too long, you're going to burn out your gauge. So you could hook it up, run to the driver's seat, and just very briefly turn the engine on to energize it. Now, behind this panel that I pulled off, you can see the various connections. So first thing I'm going to do is test the CVR. This is the CVR right here, continuous voltage regulator, and the input, the 12 volt, goes in here. And it's important that you also connect the ground here. And once you do that, there should be an average of 5 volts coming out of this terminal. I say average of 5 because it's not actually 5 volts. It's rapidly switched between 0 and 12 volts. And so the first thing that you want to do is hook it up. So you take the terminal, that'll be power, and this will be the ground. And what I'm going to do is connect the red to the 12 volt terminal here. Okay, and then I'm going to connect the ground to the ground terminal. So there should be 5 volts coming out of there. Now, because it's switched really rapidly between the 0 and 12 volts, most amp meters, multimeters, will not be able to pick that up. However, let's give it a shot here, because when I tried this previously, my multimeter did pick up the alternating voltage. So we'll put that around there and switch it, and it actually is alternating. 6 volts, 6, 0, 10. So depending on what part of the cycle it captures, it could be 0 or about 5 to 6 volts or 12 volts. Now, what they actually recommend though is that you use an analog meter. And so I've got the analog meter hooked up here. You see the leads, and you can see the pulsing. Now the next thing you want to do, and you don't have to use what I'm using, but if you have a couple of a potentiometer, and you can get these for $5 or so each at off Amazon. you can see that this is set, the potentiometer is set at about 78 ohms, and 78 ohms corresponds to 130 degrees, which is, the gauge should read C. And then 10 ohms corresponds to 250 degrees, it should read H. And the way the temp gauge works is that you have the resistance changing as the temperature goes up. So I've set the other one at about 10 ohms, right there. So what I'm doing is I'm taking the 5-volt output from the CVR, and that's connected to this. This is power in for the temp gauge. And then this normally goes to the temp sender, and the resistance changes with different temperature. But instead I've hooked that up to the potentiometer. And then the other lead in the potentiometer, this green lead, is going to the negative terminal. So I'm going to hook it up, and then I'm going to read. And as you can see, the temperature gauge is reading cold. Okay. And now I'm hooking it up to the 10 ohms, and it should go to high. And as you can see, with each pulse, it's finding the right spot, and it's going to high. You don't want to leave it on too much, because with low resistance, you're getting a lot of current through the gauge. So that's how you can check the CVR and the gauges. My understanding is that all the gauges operate similarly, and you can check each one